So in this experiment, we're going to be looking at the discovery and existence of infrared radiation as discovered by Herschel in the early 1800s. We're going to be using these photovoltaic cells, also known as photovoltaic solar collectors. These are just like the solar panels that you see on people's houses that are used to produce solar energy and solar electricity. What these cells do is they take in the light, and take the photons from the light, convert the photons to electrons, which we then can read using a voltmeter, as you can see here. So right now, in just the light of the classroom, you can see that we're reading about 0.59 volts. And if you watch, as I turn the cell around and decrease the amount of light that is falling on it, the amount of voltage we're reading also decreases. Likewise, if I increase the amount of light that's falling on it, the voltage increases. Similarly, if I cover it in half, the number should fall in half. So we're reading about 0.62, 0.63, and if I cover it in half, we fall to 0.3, 0.31, which is about half. Now, if I fully cover it, the number should become 0. And I drop to 0.0078008, which isn't quite 0, but it's close enough. So as you can see, this device takes in the photons from the light, converts it to electrons, which then we can use to read using this voltmeter. For the next part of the experiment, we're going to be playing around with the light spectrum. So we have a projector here that has a white incandescent light bulb, which incandescent means that the light bulb has been heated so hot that it's glowing and producing white light, and white light ensures that we'll have the full color spectrum contained inside the light. And as you can kind of see, we have partially covered the projector so that only a small sliver of the white light is escaping, and it is being pushed up into the mirror and then out the lens. And against the lens we have a diffraction grating, which you can think of as sort of like a prism. And what it's doing is it's breaking the white light apart by wavelength into the light spectrum, which will look like a rainbow on the board once we turn the lights off. So now we've turned the lights off, and you guys can see here on the right we have the white sliver of light, and it's been passed through the prism to give us the rainbow that you can see here. We've got purple to red, and what we want to do is probe this light spectrum with the photovoltaic cell that we were playing around earlier to look at what sort of energy levels we have in the light spectrum, where are photons available for use. So placing the photovoltaic cell into the light spectrum, as you can see, I'm reading about 0.023 volts. If I go above the light spectrum, I drop to 0.0024. And if I go below the light spectrum, I'm at 0.0017 volts. So above and below we're not quite 0, which makes sense as the room is not completely dark and we have some stray light falling on the photocell. Again, if I put it back in the middle of the light spectrum, we're at 0.024 volts, so there is energy here. If I move it over into the purple dark blue region, I read 0.007. Above this region, I drop again to 0.002, and if I go below, I read 0.0016. So again, effectively 0. Back over into the green, we have 0.02 volts. Above the green again, 0.0025. And below the green, 0.0018. Now, if I go over into the red light, we have 0.032 volts. Above the red light, 0.002 volts. And below the red light, 0.0017 volts. So as you guys can see, when we're inside the light spectrum on the board, we are reading voltage. We do have photons available for use. Above the light spectrum and below the light spectrum, there are no photons available for use as there is no light. Now, if I go over here off to the side of the red light above the spectrum, I read 0.002 volts, which matches what we were getting before. And if I drop into the dark section off to the left of the red light, we now read 0.012 volts, which is interesting. And if we go below it, I drop again to 0.0017, which is what we were getting before on the bottom. So what's going on here? Again, I'm reading 0.015 volts, which can't be dismissed as zero. So what's going on here? This area clearly has no visible light falling on it, and yet the photocell is reading voltage. There are photons here. So what we have done here is mimicked Herschel's experiment that he did in the early 1800s to show here that this dark section is infrared radiation and that there is energy here. We just can't see anything in this portion. Here you guys can see the photovoltaic cell in action. When it's fully covered, the motor completely stops as electricity has been stopped. When we uncover it, electricity flows and the fan starts spinning. Now, if we cover it in half, it should slow down as the flow of electricity is not as great as before. And again, uncovered, it's free to spin.